Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won. Yeah. I hope my team they won. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won. Yeah. I hope my team they won. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention.
This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Mike Washington is still out on assignment, so we have none other than AD Drew in the building. Yeah, you know him as the clinical professor, bringing you that updated knowledge. Welcome to episode 275 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast. The show that's covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports, from institutions large and small, from the NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, filming from our home studios in Sydney, a Signal Live. Our KCOH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, multi-Hall of Famer, and the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. And happy belated birthday to Mr. Ralph Cooper.
Yes, yes,
indeed. Let me go to Charles. How's it going out there for you, Charles?
Doing well, Doc. I tell you what, it's hot. it's super hot.
You don't say.
But no, doing well. A little too hot for the golf course, though. Tell you that much.
Oh, you would know if it's too hot for the golf course. That's a sad day for you, man. When you look out there and you like, I have time for golf, but I can't play because it's too hot.
Yeah, if the tee time ain't 7 o'clock or 7:30, I see y'all on another day. No, no thanks.
No thanks. With that being said, let me go to AD Drew. How you doing today?
Man, the only thing that was out today in this heat was the gnats where I live at, because everything else was in the air conditioner, man.
Oh, man, it's bad when the gnats. That means it's real comfortable for the gnats and miserable for everybody else.
Exactly. Because all you was doing, you was fanning the gnats away. You really fanning yourself, but air temperature got up to 101 where I am at today. Record high 101 for this date. So heat index was about $110. So I know y'all a little bit used to that down there in Texas, but for us in Georgia, that's just like extreme.
Yeah, you're right. We get those numbers, but I don't know if you're ever by definition used to it. But it happens for sure. So you're right on that. Let me take this time, as we hadn't had a chance to do in a while, and we had some of these loyal lab listeners out here. I want to give them a little shout out as we get into it. As we get into a little more dialogue, maybe some interchange. If there's some questions out there from our lab listeners, this is the day to make sure you get it out there. We got space and time for it. So Lennon, I should say, Blow, Noel Price are in the building. Noel Price says, good evening, Dean and Professors, lab time. Hashtag DI love. I think I know what that represents. Carl Moore, Chuck Hunt, ready from Monroe, Louisiana. LaShant Harris, making sure she checks out the lab. Arby Parker says, good evening. Chuck Hunt says, FAMU Marching 100 performed at the Louis Vuitton men's fashion show in Paris today, part of the band performance. Shout out to Jerome G. Sutton that sent me the link, I should say, 30 minutes, and I got to see it, man. That was a different showcase. It was exciting to see what was going on there, but admittedly, that was different for me, so I enjoyed it. Shout out to AD Drew and Roy in the background pushing the buttons. The Rattlers getting it done over there. The Marching 100 showing out a little bit in Paris of all places.
Mm-hmm.
Literally HBCUs around the world. Check that out.
Mm-hmm.
I told y'all we global. Aaron Griffin says lab time. Yes, it is. Lonnie Shaw is in the building. Big time Aggie out there, lab time. Mary Allen said good evening. Appreciate you, Mary. Sherman Miller, W. Sherman Miller to be exact. Checking us out. Chris Tucker says what's up. Texas Heat follow us to North Carolina. He said that Texas Heat and went over there to North Carolina. Yeah, that's not fair. Chris Tucker does say good evening, lab. Carol, hello. Checking us out. Chris Tucker says Virginia University in the house. I like that. CIAA representing. Lonnie Shaw says any HBCU BB being drafted tonight, basketball player. I do not believe so. I hadn't heard anybody even really mention that would have a shot. I think you'll get several that will get some camp invites, potentially seeking to get some free agency signed. But great question there, Lonnie. I'm going to be interested to see if somebody can maybe find a way to sneak in there, but hadn't had any serious talk. The Kerr says, hello, fellows. Good evening. Just give me some lab time. That's right. Ricky Burden in here. Troy Lamont Coleman says A&T is in the house. I see you. Yeah, with Troy over there. You know how he does it. We in the lab, baby, says Ricky Burden. Dr. Paul Bryant. Hello from Edward Waters University. That's the transition program, NIA to the NCAA Division II. We're going to have a surprise. We'll see if we can get the athletic director from Edward Waters University. That's the vice president of athletics, AD, as well as the president. A chance to maybe get some FaceTime with the president. We haven't done that in a while, so that'll be nice. We got the Dr. Paul Bryant putting that together. So when we get that information to you, we'll surprise you. Make sure we get that in there. Someone says, I see AD doing the strike sign, repping his arm. Yeah, you know he's going to get wild and loose with that.
Florida A&M, Dazzler,
1871 with the purple and gold there. So you know what he's talking about, representing with 1871. Got to be some Alcorn State University in the building there, putting that in there, because 1876 purple and gold a little different on that side. I was going to say the west and east side, but you know, the Braves have moved over to the west now, so we both on the west side. Karen Griffin says SIA Media Day is fast approaching. Yeah, all this is stuff getting important, and we'll get in a little bit. So, pointing to that, let me go straight to you, Charles. What's on your mind in terms of some of the latest and greatest updates that are breaking out there in the HBCU landscape? What's on your mind?
Well, I think you guys started it off. I mean, kudos to the Marching 100 performing in the Louis Vuitton fashion show. Some of the celebrities that were in attendance. Great article written by Vaughn Wilson on HBCU Game Day. But you had Kendrick Lamar and Naomi Campbell there in attendance at the fashion show. So that was pretty cool. Anytime you can take the culture worldwide, if you will. So shout out to the Marching 100 for representing well, not only for Florida A&M University, but for HBCUs. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, talking about that, Jerome G. Sutton just jumped on. I gave him a shout out a little earlier about send me the video to check that out. So great point that you did there, Charles. Still a little bit of thunder from AD Drew, so he's gonna have to go in a different direction. Shout out to Troy Franklin. Said good evening from Jaguar Nation. Yeah, them Jaguars look excited out there. They've been poaching some poachers. Some others would say, I've been just saying you hitting the free market. It is what it is. But good job to the Jaguar Nation out there as they are excited for this football season approaching. As many folks, that's one thing we're talking about. You know, you get into the deep part of the summer, folks get a little excited, think they're going to do something. We're going to see who the real contenders are from the pretenders, as they say. But with that going on, let's shout out and see AD Drew. What direction did you want to go into?
First, I want to say Florida A&M, Dazzler, that's Florida A&M in the house. You know, I do petite French, petite Francais. Yeah. Yeah, had to go back to my high school days. Remember the French class. Look, I can read it all day. Just don't ask me what I said. But get back into it. And you just mentioned it. One of our lab listeners mentioned SIAC has officially announced their the media day, July 13th, at the College Football Hall of Fame. And that's going to be Wednesday, July 13th, and that will be presented by Cricket Wireless. It's going to be interesting to see what comes out of that meeting. I was actually on the phone with the athletic director from SIAC school today. We was just chatting. Nothing that I could drop, no nuggets or anything like that. We were just having a general chat, and but I am going to be curious to see how they're going to tackle the two teams coming in on the east side, whether they're going to be eligible for the SIAC championship. Are they still going with the East-West? Because looking at the schedules, doesn't look like they're quite going with the traditional East-West format like they have in the past. So seeing how they're going to have the two teams come together in the championship game, is it going to be 1 and 2? Or are they still going to do some type of East-West? And, just kind of seeing how they're going to tackle that. And maybe we can get some dibs on how they're going to tackle basketball, where they've got an additional two teams that come in basketball with Lemoyne and Spring Hill come in basketball. So seeing how they're going to tackle the conference alignment and conference scheduling throughout as they're up to I believe 14 on the men's side, 13 on the women's side, and I may have that number off by 1, but just going to be interesting to see what comes out of the SIAC. And last thing on the SIAC, in the old SIAC West, and I say old because we don't know how it's going to be divided, but every coach is new except for Lane University.
That makes the things really interesting and fascinating. To your point, I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit. Stick with you. Two questions. First one is, if you were in charge, how would you break it up?
For football, for all the other sports, because football obviously is a different animal.
Since
because
we're talking a little bit of football, let's start with football. And since they have a championship game, how would you break that down?
I moved the two Atlanta teams to the West.
Why the Atlanta team?
Because geographically, they're the closest ones to the West. It's the easiest. It's the easiest travel for those, because if you move the two Atlanta teams, you got miles straight down I-20 from Atlanta. You've got Kentucky State straight up I-65. You've got Tuskegee straight down I-85. So, and then if you get to Birmingham, Lane and Lane is a straight shot from Birmingham. So travel wise, it's the simplest thing to do to move the two Atlanta teams to the West. At least one of the two Atlanta teams to the West. But if you take one, you might as well take both. That's why I said the two Atlanta teams.
So it'll be balanced still?
It'll never be balanced because of Morehouse. You're always going to have one odd because of Morehouse. It's going to be 7-6, one way or the other. So the question is, where do you put the 7? Do you put the 7 in the West, or do you put the 7 in the East? Because on the East side, you've got the remaining Georgia schools: Fort Valley, Albany State, Savannah State. Then you bring in Edward Waters, and then you've got the two schools in South Carolina who are literally across the street from each other, Benedict and Allen. So those six stay together. The question is, do you bring the Atlanta team in to make the 7th and keep the Atlanta market in both East and West, or do you take the full Atlanta market and shift them to the West? That's how I would look at it if I was the incoming SIAC commissioner.
Charles, it seemed like you were thinking in a different direction of the Atlanta schools. Who are you thinking about? Probably
that actually makes sense. I mean, once I listen to AD's rationale in terms of the Atlanta schools moving to the West, and really, I have to keep in mind the South Carolina schools there. So when you're talking about the SIAC, so that I hadn't factored in the South Carolina schools there, because I immediately honed in on the Georgia schools. But that's a great point.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Second part of the question is now you're going to be a little prognosticator. How do you think they will break it down?
Yeah, actually, looking at how the schedules are made, like I say, it just looks like it's just You playing 8 games for SIAC for football, which is why I asked the question: are you just going to take the top 2 teams to the SIAC championship game record wise, or because it doesn't look like, because I went through and actually did a schedule grid, and it doesn't look like the traditional East West where you play everybody on your side and then you play 1 or 2 on the opposite side. It doesn't look like that this year when I looked at the schedule.
AD, what do you think is the better format for an SIAC championship game? To play at a central location, or to go home, or to the best records home field?
Well, let me give you a breakdown of that. In the past, the SIAC has alternated between East and West, irregardless of record. I believe last year it was in the East because Miles hosted it last year. So this year, by right, it should be, it was in the West because Miles hosted. This year, by right, it should be the East champion. But I actually like the format that the SWAC uses and puts it where you have the best record. You get to host it, and you get the benefit of hosting it. You get your fans, your fans are going to be there, versus the CIAA, who, they may get, obviously they're getting money from that city where they're hosting it at in Salem, Virginia, but it may leave a little something to be desired from a fandom point of view, because especially if you get, you got to think about those teams from the South. Whoever's the North is going to have an advantage playing in Salem, Virginia. It's that Southern team. And maybe that's one of the reasons Fayetteville State can't get over the hump, is because their fans don't travel, and you've probably got maybe a 3-to-1 ratio of fans. I'm just throwing something out there when I say that.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's a great point. I did want to shout out before we go to this break. That's why it's good to have your VP of Athletics on joining us. He said, Edward Waters, this is Dr. Paul Bryant, says Edward Waters and Allen University can compete for the SIAC championship this coming year in all sports except football.
Except
football. Great Ed Day. Thanks, Dr. Bryant.
Thanks, Paul.
In there, so pretty good. Let's get into our first break. We'll come back and talk about a little more news, and just like there, if you got some updates, questions in the chat, let us know. We'll dig a little deeper into it. We'll break down some more news. There's some good news out there, and some people may think it's a little slow right now, but there's some things we can get in and talk about. There's some churning, some changing things going around the landscape that we must discuss, some updates, and some people putting out some good news. So we'll get into a little more and get what these two gentlemen think about the HBCU landscape, diaspora, as we like to call it, as we move forward. We'll be right back after this break.
Oh, that spin class was brutal. Well, you can try using the Buick's massaging seat. Oh, yeah, that's nice.
Can I use Apple CarPlay to put some music on?
Sure, it's wireless.
Pick something we all like. Okay, hold on. What's your Buick's Wi-Fi password?
Buick Envision 2021.
Oh, you should pick something stronger. That's really predictable.
That's a really tight spot. Don't worry, I used to hate parallel parking.
Me too.
Hey.
Really outdid yourself.
Yes, we did.
The all-new Buick Envision, an SUV built around you, all of you.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp, tofu, and rasta pasta? Well, find your way over to Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta.
Them belly full, but we hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open till 4 a.m. Come to Mango's and put some spice in your life.
So we've got a good thing going.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta. For more info or directions, call 404-698-3992 or log on to mangoscaribbeanrestaurant.com. For instant coupons, text MANGOS to 313131.
Tell your mama hungry, papa hungry, brother hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, authentic Caribbean cuisines.
Open up the door, tell your mama hungry.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Test the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside HBCU Sports Lab. We have the professors in the building. It's Professor Bishop and clinical visiting Professor Drew. With that being said, there is a report out there. I kind of touched on it a little bit, and I said it makes sense. It sounds like it looks like they're moving in that direction with the 4 remaining baseball programs set to depart the MEAC in just that sport. This is the Northeast Conference, what they'll be joining. And what I looked at when I talked about either Northeast Conference or potentially American East is the Northeast Conference is down to 6 teams. Folks don't realize. And remember, the minimum bid that you need to have an automatic bid to the baseball tournament or any tournament playoffs, if you would, for that matter, has to be 6. That's why you see the MEAC teams looking at going provisional in terms of their membership in the Northeast for that sport only, is because they're down to 4. They had the 2-year hiatus where they didn't have 6 members. And now, obviously, they would lose that automatic bid. And so you have Coppin State, obviously, that won the MEAC this year in terms of the tournament. You have Delaware State, they won the regular season. Norfolk State won it last year, in Maryland Eastern Shore. That looks like they'll be moving. Likely we'll have an announcement coming up pretty shortly if that is the case. And pretty good sources to say that this is the case. A couple of questions I have for you all. What are your thoughts in this? Obviously, it seems something that you almost have to do. But in any other fashions, Drew, what do you think about this move? Does it make sense in terms of making sure that your baseball programs can take advantage of an automatic bid if they can win the Northeast Conference and then therefore get into the playoffs? Or would you see them trying to wait it out maybe to see if they can get some other teams coming up? What are your thoughts on that, Drew?
First of all, is this officially conference tournament, Dr. Cavil, or is this just a move? How would you classify that?
This wouldn't be conference churning. This would be with program churning in this particular way we look at it. This is a particular program because they're not taking all of their programs and declaring full membership in a conference. So as we look at it from that perspective, we wouldn't call it conference churning. Great question.
Okay. It's about survival right now, Dr. Cavil. I am so happy that I decided to take the flight to Norfolk, Virginia this season to attend the MEAC baseball tournament, because that may be the last one for a while that anyone can attend. So I am happy that I actually decided to do it, and my schedule allowed me to do it there at the last minute. So just wanted to say that. And I had outside of the 4-hour and some odd minute championship game, if game, I actually enjoyed myself, and I enjoyed the if game. It just got long trying to beat the rain. But what I really need to do, and I have not had time to break this down, Dr. Cavil, is I know some of these teams have played Northeast Conference teams. So what is the MEAC's record against the Northeast Conference over the past couple of years? That's what I really would like to know, to see how competitive we will be, because us going to the Northeast Conference to be bottom feeders does us no good. We need to be in that conference. We need to be competitive. We need to be in what is going to be 10 teams now with the 6 that they have remaining. So somebody needs to finish in the top 3, get to the semifinals of the conference tournament at least these first couple of years, to really show that MEAC baseball is competitive. Us being bottom feeders is not a good thing.
to your point that you were able to get this championship this year, I wish I would have thought about it. I probably would have put into it. I got to think about that moving forward, about being part of that. Another challenge that I go with Charles to kind of get his perspective, but add on his part of it. The other challenge, you know, the teams that a lot of people have suggested or maybe potentially heard would be Virginia State. That would work from the standpoint they have baseball, so that helps you get to 5. But then we're looking at, you know, Bowie State is some team in terms of elite HBCU Division II program out of CIA that may move up, that people at least had some interest. The other one would be Winston-Salem State. Some people talked about Fayetteville State. The challenge with those 3 programs, if they do move up, they don't have baseball. So unless they decide to bring in baseball, they don't help you in terms of that. And so that's the challenge you're looking at in terms of, because CIAA, remember, you know, talk about that. People wanted to hear a little more about CIAA. One of the challenges you have with CIAA is they don't have baseball. So baseball collegiately, D2, D1 in that area is a challenge in itself, particularly with HBCUs, but in general. So that's a different perspective when you start thinking about it. This is not just the MEAC in terms of the challenge of baseball. This is CIAA. And long before the MEAC had to make this move, they disbanded baseball in terms of CIAA at the Division II level. So what are your overall thoughts in terms of baseball, HBCUs, particularly in this region, compared to maybe what you're seeing in the SWAC and SIAC?
Well, the first and foremost thing, I'm glad that these universities were able to find a conference that could house their baseball teams. And that was the thing that jumped out for me, that these programs don't have to shutter, much like North Carolina Central did. But I think you kind of answered the question that I had, was how difficult would it have been for the MEAC to go out and find 2 more teams to get that automatic berth? And you started touching on, I guess, the regionality of baseball becoming an issue with regards to finding viable programs to add to the MEAC. So maybe in this case, it was better to, for lack of better words, cut ties and allow them to, you know, go where they could house and continue their programs.
Yeah, I think they had no choice. And you're bringing up a good point that I'm trying to put out to the masses, is that this is a bigger issue than just losing those. And Steve Gaither has joined us, and he jumped in here. And we're going to talk about another article where he talks a little more in depth about the Howard move in the MEAC in general on that level. We'll see if we can get into his article. I encourage you to go read it. Really provides some in-depth knowledge and some quotes from some anonymous sources that talk about why Howard chose to stay in the MEAC in regard to that. Good information, and it's the things that I researched and was told directly to. So many of the things I can speak to in regards to the validity of it. But with that said, getting back to this phenomenon we're talking about here, I talked to you earlier today, Charles, as I was trying to get my workout. Yes, I'm staying true. I'm working out, so y'all can keep proud of me. But I told you about the fact that one of the issues that I'm going to watch my eyes on is college sports in general. From a football perspective, you know, most people see football, college sports pretty rapid. There's been some concern with the attendance numbers going down. But with this decision with OU and Texas moving into the SEC no later than 2024, and how the SEC and these programs, Texas, are dominating not just football, but some of these Olympic sports in terms of softball. The softball championship were played between Texas and OU. They're going to the SEC. OU is playing in the championship. When you look at the College World Series, it was dominated by Southern teams, other than Notre Dame out of the Midwest, basically. You had 4 teams from the SEC. You had 2 from the Big 12, but the 2 from the Big 12 are joining the SEC, Texas and OU again. And so what happens to a sport when it becomes just regionalized in terms of that framework is another component of what we're seeing taking place with baseball, with the CIAA and MEAC. So it's going to be—
You get hockey, Dr. Cavil.
What does that mean? Yep. in terms of that framework. So I'm fascinated what that looks like.
You get hockey when that happens, Dr. Cavil.
Yeah. That may be the point where you have those Northeast teams, Midwest teams, and East Coast teams that focus on hockey. And now that becomes even a bigger idea from them. And just like you see hockey in a lot of ways dominating the East Coast, even though those teams haven't been like successful with Tampa and Colorado in the championship game, showing off a little bit more hockey knowledge. I don't know. Maybe go ahead, Charles, before I get myself in trouble.
Well, you know what? Steve Davis after we had that conversation, Steve Davis actually touched on a point that I'm really curious about, and it actually goes in with, today marks 50 years since Title IX, but I guess it's a question of athletic programs in general. How has Title IX affected the athletic programs in general, where you're starting to overall see that regionality happen?
Yeah, you depending on who you talk to, there are a lot of folks that seem to want to put the blame and onus on Title IX. I'm not one of them. I think that is an excuse that you see a lot of athletic directors use. And I'm saying it at all levels, not just HBCUs. Obviously, we say HBCU, but you see all types of different levels, FBS, Power Fives, Division III conferences talking about letting go of wrestling or fencing, baseball, and then blaming it on Title IX. But a lot of that is really the fact that people are disproportionately spending money in a given area. And because they want to spend more money thinking they're going to get some return when they're not getting a return, then the causality comes out with the various sports on the men's side. Yeah. And so I think it's a choice than it is more about the repercussions or the byproduct of focusing on Title IX. But people will go back and forth, so I'm not trying to act like I have the only saying this, but I'm not one that believes in the Title IX as the issue.
Can I touch on that for a second?
Sure.
Yeah. I think, like you just said, I think Title IX becomes the excuse for poor management. A lot of times I agree. You don't go out and raise the funds like you need to. Alumni may not contribute like they need to, and or whatever the case is. But business decisions have to be made at certain points in times. If the expenses continue to outweigh the revenues, then as a business, which, believe it or not, everybody, these universities, these athletic departments are businesses. So if expenses continue to outweigh revenues, then decisions have to be made, cuts have to be made. Where Title IX comes in is that, okay, it actually may make more financial sense to, quote unquote, cut that women's program, but because this law is on the book saying you have to fund things at certain levels and divvy up scholarships equally, et cetera, that's why the men's sports seem to be the ones that are cut. It's not because they're cutting them because they're being mean to men. A lot of it has to do with financial circumstance. Some of it is mismatched, some of it's just financial circumstance, some of it's just life. But because this law protects females, protects our daughters, then unfortunately we as men, my son has to suffer because this law protects my daughter. That's just my 2 cents on it.
Yeah. Again, I don't believe and that's one of the things I really challenge with, because in this country, we really have a poor framework in our mind that we think we're resource deprived. And when we think we're resource deprived, if we provide allocations to one group or one dynamic, we automatically believe that
taking away
something from somebody else. So this is the same issue that they play over and over. They're just playing in this sport. And we got to be really careful, because if we not careful, we repeat these misnomers, these really lies, for lack of better words, not to just tear somebody down, but they're not true. And half the time, if you looked at the books, they're not reallocating those funds to women's sports anyway. Again, they're reallocating those funds to other men's sports. So I've studied this for a long period of time, and it's just what we do. And in fact, I told you about Brian and Sports Rap. We were on another show that talked about NIL for the Houston Community College with professors across the country and other things about the marketing perspective. And one of the things we found out that there's a large segment of the NIL market that's dedicated to women and the products that they sell from a marketing standpoint. So there's interest and focus in that. And so folks that want to make money is there. The question is do you have an interest in driving it? And sometimes people's natural interest, even as an athletic director, they focus on things that are easier for them to believe that they can develop versus things that they may have to put a little more energy and different types of resources to get done. So yeah, that's a really great subject. And I'm glad we got into it a little bit because I think it is important for us to discuss it and have open and honest dialogue about it. From a perspective, I hope that you saw maybe a little different. Let's take this next break, get back in here, and get into a little more dialogue about a tough subject for a lot of people. We'll talk a little bit about this Howard University decision, which was really huge and significant for the MEAC. But Stephen Gaither, again, out of HBCU Game Day, while Howard University chose to stay in the MEAC, gets a little more into, just how, as you said, AD Drew, how churning works from that perspective and how everybody was in a lot of ways nervous that if they didn't make a decision, that they may be the last one standing. So this is going to be interesting to see in a lot of ways how does that move forward. But I think one thing is missing here, and we got to be careful of that because depending on who this was, we would give that person a lot more credit. But MEAC Commissioner Sonia Steele deserves a great deal of credit, at least at this point, to be able to hold this thing together, especially if you get a chance and you have read, you see it. If you haven't, once you read why Howard University chose to stay in the MEAC, you really start to understand that she deserves a lot of credit for finding a way to hold that together, at least at this point for this year. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this break.
2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties. Through its programs, Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and Parenting Education Coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentjax.
Are you ready? It's time. The inaugural Urban NerdCon is coming to Montgomery, Alabama, July 29th through the 31st.
World, what's happening? Rob Morgan here. Just letting you know, July 29th through the 31st, I'll be at Montgomery, Alabama, Urban NerdCon. Come on out, get something signed, take a photo, say hello, let's share some stories and create some memories, Peace.
So join us by visiting theurbannerdcon.net for ticket and vendor information. This will be the premier blurred event in the universe. TheUrbanNerdCon.net. Our heroes, our villains, our stories, everyone's con. See you there.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service with Slow Burn. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. It's more than a mobile lounge. It's an environment and an experience rich in history, luxury, and personality. An elegant extension of any celebration occasion. It's the perfect escape and meeting place, a space where you can relax or enjoy a shared passion. Have Slow Burn plan your next big event, or before you are planning to celebrate your win over your athletic rival, you can shop our collections at www.slowburnwaco.com.
But if they want to tab, I'ma do the dab, yeah. Press the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna love, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gonna teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Will with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Great comments coming from the lab lecture listeners out here. specifically, Karen Gruen says, speaking of alumni support, how does it look now to the mostly female student enrollment in alumni bases of colleges in general, specifically for HBCUs? That's a great question in terms of who are the dominant group that are going to college and becoming a larger specific component of those that are alumni, and more so, what does that look like with them being more active in the alumni association as well, in terms of that, in a lot of ways. So for some schools, I should say.
That's a great question.
Right. That's a question that I really need to get my colleague right here at Texas Southern University, as you know, who I'm referencing. Charles, you've had her for a class. Dr. Courtney Flowers,
many classes.
Title IX expert, literally in terms of research. So over the next couple of weeks, I'll reach out and see if her time will permit. She may be traveling. She does do her traveling and get into some things in the summer. But I'll see if I can schedule with her, because she really can provide some significant and meaningful commentary on Title IX, not just from a research, but she has the lived experience of playing golf coming out of the greater Michigan, Detroit area at Mississippi Valley State, getting her master's over at Grambling State University, and then doing her PhD studies over at New Mexico with their strong program they have over there. So it's fascinating when you start talking about Title IX 50th anniversary, as we certainly should be celebrating that and what is done for a lot of people out here. Go ahead.
Doc, before you go, on the CIAA network, there's an interview with Commissioner Jackie McWilliams and Commissioner Sonia Steele. Haven't had a chance to watch all of it, just watched the first few minutes of it, but on this 50th anniversary of Title IX, it's an interview that I think everyone needs to take a few moments. It's about 25 minutes long, and just watch it. It's just those two on the podcast, just going back and forth, having dialogue between the two of them.
Oh, it's dynamic. And I've seen one, as I let Charles jump back in here with his updated question, is when I was at the conference in Charlotte, you had McWilliams there with Dr. Kiki Baker-Barnes, and had this idea that all three of them need to get together to do a show. And so I'm working on that, if it's not our show, to make sure that it's on a show that a young lady, to be upfront, can provide some commentary. I said I'd join it welcomely, but it'd be fascinating to see that dynamic in terms of leadership there, and celebrate that in a lot of ways, what it means, because you're right. That session I had with them in Charlotte, and imagine that interview we're talking about, some powerful thought process of what it means to be in the business, one, and how do you deal with sports. What were you going to say, Charles?
Yeah, and I wanted to mention today is the actual day, June 23rd, 1972, that Title IX of the Education Amendment was passed. So I did want to make notice of that. Spoke with Jackson State's SID this morning, and they have a great article on GoJSUTigers.com where they recognize, they had a committee that was put together by former SID Sam Jefferson, where they recognize the athletics celebrates 50 years of Title IX, recognize the most impactful women student athletes at Jackson State. So that's a fascinating read to go through and take a look at the top 50 women's student athletes at Jackson State for the past 50 years. A lot of great names on there, a lot of names I remember. So if you're a Jackson State fan, or if you're an HBCU fan in general, a lot of names you'll recognize.
And to shout out in terms of women getting it done, assistant basketball coach was recognized with the honor today or yesterday in regards to being one of the top assistants out there. Is that correct too?
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. She was recognized. I'm going to pull that information up here in a quick sec, but I did want to make mention of that as well. So it's tremendous, impactful reads all across a lot of HBCU websites in regards to Title IX and the impact of women athletes. And that assistant coach was LaShonda Cousin. She was named one of the most impactful mid-major assistant coaches. So definitely wanted to recognize and shout her out.
No doubt. With that, let's get in a little bit about Howard, as we did on our show with Commissioner Steele's bringing her back up. And then the next day you got the affirmation letter in regards to Howard and the commitment for all the presidents who are staying there. You got a tweet that came out a couple of days ago affirming that, I guess, if you would. And then they talked about Howard is expected to stay in the CIAA. One of the things that I talked with, I'll say with Stephen, when we were having our discussions about what we were listening here, is I told him one of the key points you wanted to look at is the June meeting, board meeting that Howard had 2 weeks ago. And reason that was important because you have the July 1st date where you're going to make a conference move. You want to do it before that date because the financial money doubles if you make it after that date with the idea that you're going to change within a year. So once I didn't hear anything came out, I was really confirmed about that. And then you hear the news out here. But one of the things that goes interesting in the article just talks about how Howard was getting a lot of attention, but we'd heard a little bit about Delaware State in terms of their board meetings where they had conference training. And this was really early, right after FAMU, Bethune-Cookman, and A&T had exited. It was before the July 1st when a lot of people were open at, and you heard some conversation with some thought process with the NEC. You heard a little bit about Morgan State, but he puts a little more in there, and he names a conference that was looking heavily at them, was American East Conference, in terms of the Morgan State, according to this article here. You know that Howard had these 6 programs participating in the NEC. So NEC had some interest. So as you saw the conference churning and taking place, Norfolk State, Big South was putting updates in terms of the interest of Norfolk State. So it talks about how you have commissioners out there that are using consultants to talk to folks to see if they have some interest in moving to a different conference in regards to what that looks like. And or you have ADs, presidents of these institutions talking with each other and trying to make sure when you're meeting with these straight faces and saying, yeah, we're committed. They say, yeah, we've heard that before. Are you sure you committed? Are you really, really committed? Because if you're really committed, then I'm committed, then we committed. But if you're not really committed, you know, we don't want to be stuck with the bag. So a lot of that goes on. So after we take this last break, I want to come back and get your thoughts in terms of how all that shapes the narrative of HBCUs in general. Where is the landscape going for HBCUs, which it seems like a great time for a lot of HBCU athletic programs in terms of the amount of publicity that's out there, the amount of coverage, obviously may be dominated by a specific institution or a group in terms of a conference. But what does that all look like and what does it mean going forward? What do you see the landscape over the next 10 years? I want to see your thoughts and kind of give me your thoughts in general on Howard and the MEAC and the rest of the programs. And then further out, the second part of that, we'll get a little thoughts in terms of where's the future going. Stick with us after this last break. We'll get in that discussion in terms of the future HBCUs, whether that's winning the conference at multiple levels. What is the nexus?
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they want a lot, and who the ball.
One bite of 100% Angus beef ballpark frank, and you'll say, hello, summer. Oh yeah, it's ballpark season.
Q Time is a classic Atlanta soul food restaurant located in the historic West End. Q Time Soul Food is a family business started by Fred and Christine Crenshaw. Come on in, relax, and sink your chops into our tantalizing, mouth-watering, distinctive soul food with a twist, the Q Time way. 1120 Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard, or call your order in at 404-758-2881. Do you miss your mama's cooking? Then come on down to Q Time, an Urban Passport member.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Professor Bishop and Clinical Professor A.D. Drew. One thing before I get in that question, I kind of had to pause at the end for you all to consider purposefully there, was the fact I wanted to get into the strategy of CIA, the colonial, if you would. I thought it was something that also needs to be considered, is their strategy was to go after a group of HBCUs.
Yeah.
And it sounds like if you kind of read the tea leaves in the history, it looks like they purposely looked at Howard. I think in a lot of ways they knew they probably could get Hampton, and they wanted to strategically get North Carolina A&T. Obviously, they got 2 of the 3. But in terms of all this potential churning that was taking place, starting with you, Charles, in a lot of ways, what are your thoughts in terms of what does this mean for the MEAC, and how strong does Commissioner Sonny still look in terms of being able to hold this together?
She looks extremely strong. And what jumped out at me from the article was the statement that Howard's president made. We just decided to give her a chance. And how often have we seen something as simple as, I'm going to give this person a chance, watch how it blossoms. Contrary to popular belief, even taking a look at Coach Prime at Jackson State, you know, he had to be given a chance, and that was met with a lot of laughter, and what are y'all doing, and this, that, and the other, and look how that has panned out. Sometimes a chance is all you need, and I'm big on Commissioner Steele with regards to how she was able to hold the MEAC together and where this conference can flourish from here, because I really, when you heard her on, I believe it was episode 259, you really believed in her message and her optimism for where she can take this conference.
That's a great point. Drew, what are your thoughts?
A woman with a plan. That's the first thing that this looks like, is an affirmation that she is a woman with a plan, where she is able to convince those 8 bosses, basically, those 8 presidents and those 8 athletic directors, that, look, I've got a plan. I need y'all to trust me. How many times do we hear this in life? I just need you to trust me, trust the process, trust this plan. Give me X amount of time. Then if it don't work right, then do what you need to do to best serve your interests, but you got to give me a chance. And that's what happened. They did not bail on the new commission. Let's think about this. Also, a woman with the plan. I'm pretty sure she had a lot to do with it in strategically placing all 4 of these schools in this conference. But this is the same conference that was trying to get one of your members full time. Maybe there was something going on. Okay, if y'all leave Howard alone, we'll send our 4 baseball teams over there to you. Kind of like what you see on MLB trades and stuff like that. Maybe, you know, that I'm pretty sure there was some negotiation going on back there in order for all this to happen. Y'all need us, but we need Howard. We need Howard to stay. So we sent our 4 baseball teams over there. Let's keep Howard over there. And then maybe also Howard has kind of looked and saw what has happened to A&T and Hampton since leaving the MEAC. And what do I mean by that? The grass is not always greener on the other side, i.e. Hampton and A&T going to the Big South. They got over to the Big South and found out that lush lawn that the Big South had was field turf. It wasn't real grass. So Hampton made the decision to come on over here to the CAA and try that landscaping out. Same thing A&T is doing next year. Maybe Howard sat back and saw what has happened to them, how their alumni and some other people have reacted to that. It's like, maybe this may not be the best move for us by going over here to the CAA. Let's stay put for a minute and give her a chance. If things go left, we always know we've got the CAA in our hip pocket.
They did leave the door open.
Yeah, great point when you're talking about leaving the door open. Great point in terms of Big South, particularly for Hampton, because their sample size is a little larger. And other than track and field, they struggled in the Big South. And even track and field did not stay up at the top once A&T came in. And even this year on the Big South,
A&T got
they
schooled.
didn't finish top 3 in terms of those teams who were up there. So some trouble there. A&T, for whatever reason, when they had a chance to go with Colonial, they left the Big South. So even if they thought there were some good things about the Big South, obviously they thought the Colonial was better. So intriguing when you talk about understanding the landscape and what does it mean, not just in terms of your ability to participate in the sports financially, what you might have to do, but also in terms from a cultural perspective of what your fans may want in terms of even more so your alumni in that perspective. So intriguing points you make there when you talk about that. Did want to give a shout out before we start to close things down. Big South, talking about them track and field. 3 of the 4 honors of the awards go to Aggies that were nationally represented in so many different ways, dominated the Big South in terms of that conference. Another thing I kind of wanted to talk on, since we're getting in this talk and you're starting to get into these spring meetings, even though they tend to be held in the summer. It's funny, there is Gulf Coast Athletic Council Conference. So president elects new leadership for the Gulf Coast Athletic Conference. We don't often pay attention to this. I mean, we hear about it, but we don't pay attention to this. And I would love to get on record. I've talked to some of the commissioners off the record, and they talk about how much having a solid president that supports the ideas that a commissioner is putting out there during their tenure is important. Because you can have a president that's over the council. And when I say the council of presidents, the chair essentially of all the presidents over your council, that is the liaison in a lot of ways between the commissioner and the rest of the presidents until they have their group meeting where all of them come together and you get your plan of action. There's an individual that kind of leads that platform. And oftentimes, depending on that relationship, can go a long way in terms of what a commissioner can get done. Because you always hear people talking about a commissioner and whether they're strong or weak. But as we've seen throughout this show, that the commissioner answers to the presidents and chancellors of that executive board of counselors that is leading all the institutions. So they may take input, and they basically ask the commissioner to take charge and make sure whatever plan they agree to, and essentially what they put on the table is able to go forward from that perspective. So Flanders Smith College out of Arkansas in the NIA, Gulf Coast Athletic Conference, now what comprised of all HBCU membership was the previous president was Dr. Roderick Smothers Sr. Oddly enough, he's an Alpha fraternity member and ran for the national president. My understanding he's going to run again, so that should be interesting. But he cycles off, and now you have the new president of Tougaloo College, President Dr. Carmen Walters, was coming on board for a 2-year term. With the new commissioner, Dr. Kiki Baker-Barnes, and when I say new, she's the full-time active commissioner, which has never been done for the Gulf Coast Athletic Conference. And she had a lot of support from Dr. Roger Smothers because he was leading the rest of the presidents in making the decision that they needed a full-time commissioner. So you'd imagine you get that same support for Walters, but it will be interesting to see what that means going forward. Dr. Van Newkirk of Fisk University was selected as the vice chair of the Gulf Coast Athletic Conference. So I wanted to give you in this show some different perspectives of the landscape, moving past just having interviews, but give you some dialogue on some things that you don't necessarily talk. And this time of the year, where we're outside of the sports segment, you know, sometimes we bring you the research that is out there. We give you interviews with folks that come from HBCU spaces that are connected with sports in different ways than we see when we talk about the coaches, athletic directors, and players directly. So wanted to kind of put that on the table before we close out there. The last thing is another good thing coming back to FAMU. Former FAMU football players organized support rally football from HBCU game day. Extremely important when you get the support of previous players from a particular sport. They come on board and say that we like what's going on here. We want to see more of it, and you're going to support it. FAMU's National Alumni Association. And we've heard for so many, based on the state of Florida, the need to have that sport support is significant when you have a governing body above the board of regents, but the board of governors that talks about not allowing funds associated with organizational funds from the institution being used directly for athletics. So fascinating to kind of see these things go past. So wanted to kind of put that on the table before we close. Quick last thought from you, AD Drew.
Excuse me. Just got 1 week left in this calendar month. Exactly 1 week left in the calendar month. Don't expect any earth-shattering news, but you never know, Dr. Cavil. I mean, it's something could happen June 29th, June 30th out there. So just
but they say keep your head on the swivel.
Keep your head on the swivel. That's all I'm gonna say.
Charles, what are your final thoughts?
Again, I mentioned the date. Today is the day for 50-year anniversary of Title IX. Look how far women's athletics have come in those 50 years. So I definitely want to highlight and put a spotlight on the fact that women's athletics has just made tremendous strides, still more strides to go. But what a first 50 years it has been.
Shout out to Andre Felder, David Rhodes, Dr. Roderick Byron Holmes, Dr. Holmes. And it'll be interesting to see where A&T, as a new director of track and field programs, Hilton, the athletic director, names Johnson in regards to taking over that program. And that'll be fascinating to see what that looks like. That's Alan Johnson. Has a good background, and I've heard a lot of those that are in track and field really appreciate what he has done in the past. So it'd be interesting to see if he can continue the momentum. And he has a different landscape that's changing, moving into a different conference. So something to keep your eyes in terms of what that looks like. That'll do it for us today on the show. Hope you enjoyed us taking a little different perspective of giving you that inside information of what it means in terms of what's going on there. Like the 2022 shirt, I see that. Black College World Series. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Watson, Charles Bishop, with our guest, if you would, clinical visiting professor, a little more than just a guest, AD Drew. Again, we want to thank you for listening, Dr. Mills, Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watson, Charles Bishop, every Tuesday and Thursday right here at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time. Look forward to next week as we discuss the latest in the lab. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's DrKenyattacavil. Make sure you continue to check out the pregame show. Download my JVN, my BCSN. Check out Brian and AD of Sports Rap, O&G Strike Zone. Make sure you keep us out. And we're going to bring back the Nights of the Round Table. So check that out as we get in the fall. We're going to make you see what's going on in HBCU sports. We're going to bring it from every and many different angles. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Also on Saturday, make sure you check out Carlos Brown. Great interview he had last week with the athletic director, AD Banks. Good information in terms of that. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab on YouTube and Facebook. Dream big and continue to move forward. We'll talk with you soon. Charles.
Of course.
Drew.
Lecture.
Dismiss.
Well.